Hey YouTube, RPI Buck Hunter here, coming at you with what will hopefully be another useful technology video. Today we're going to be talking about auxiliary cables for the Sony WH-1000XM2 headphones. And I don't have Sony's other models of these headphones, but I'm given to understand that they're very similar. So this information should be applicable for the first generation and the new third generation of these headphones. This model that I have here is the second generation that Sony released last year. So I primarily purchased these headphones for their Bluetooth functionality, of course, but recently I was on a plane that had an in-flight entertainment system, but they did not supply headphones. You had to connect your own headphones to the in-flight entertainment system, which of course you can't do over Bluetooth. You need to use an auxiliary cable for that. And the auxiliary cable that I had with me in my bag was not the Sony supplied auxiliary cable, and I was very disappointed to find out that it did not work with these headphones. So the reason you need kind of a special auxiliary cable for these headphones is that the 3.5 millimeter input is actually recessed just a tiny bit, like maybe a couple fractions of an inch, into the headphone casing itself. So certain 3.5 millimeter cords are not going to fully seat in the input jack, and thus the headphones won't work. So I went out and I purchased a couple popular, well-reviewed cables on Amazon, and we're going to take a look at a couple of them and see. So for starters, this is the Sony supplied cable, and the only reason this wasn't in my bag at the time I was taking my flight was because I had misplaced it, and I only found it after I came back. But this cord is actually surprisingly durable. It's not nylon braided, but it's very flexible. It doesn't have that rigid feel that most auxiliary cables have. So I suspect that this will hold up very well for travel, which doesn't surprise me. This is a premium headphone that Sony offers, so it makes sense that they supply a premium auxiliary cable too. But one of the things I cannot understand the decision on their part is the connector that goes into your phone or whatever in-flight entertainment system. It's got this right angle connector on it, which isn't necessarily good in all situations. So I wanted to find an auxiliary cable with a straight connector that would work too. So the cable that I had in my bag at the time is this one. It's a nylon braided cable made by a company, I believe they're called Old Boy Tech. This was the first hit on Amazon when I searched for braided auxiliary cable. I like the nylon braided cables, particularly for traveling. When they're going to be thrown in a bag, they're much less likely to fray or get kinked or anything like that. So particularly for traveling, I always try to use nylon braided cables. And I went to plug this into my headphones here, and it fits so loosely in the headphone jack. For a second, I thought they had sent me the wrong product. I thought maybe they had sent me a 2.5 millimeter cable instead of a 3.5 millimeter cable. And so when I got back home and I finally found the Sony cord and I started comparing the two, you can see that the Sony cord has this little black bevel on it that raises the auxiliary port out from the housing of the cord. So if you line up the housings next to each other, you can see how much further out the housing on the Sony cord extends. And so that's what it allows it to slide past the headphone casing and actually plug in and make a secure connection into the audio jack. So again, this cord is very high quality, and I am sure it will work for several years to come. But I wanted to have a backup in case it gets lost, or something happens to it, or I'm trying to plug into a system where that right angle connector is not going to work. So I ordered a bunch of other highly rated audio cables on Amazon to see if any of them would work. So the first one I tried is this Anker auxiliary cable. I typically like Anker products, especially their cables. They do a lot of bend tests on them and things like that to really make them super durable for travelers. And that's really what this is for. I can't imagine I would ever use an auxiliary cable on these headphones, since they are Bluetooth and the battery does last quite a very long time on them. Pretty much the only reason I would use an auxiliary cable on these headphones would be to connect to an in-flight entertainment system or something like that. Unfortunately, however, even though this cable does have, very similar to the Sony one, it does have a bevel there, extending the jack. However, when we insert it into the headphones, it's just a little too wide. I don't know how well that's going to show up on the camera, but it's just a little bit too wide of a bevel to get past the housing surrounding the input jack on the headphones. And so, unfortunately, this cable was a no-go, which was rather disappointing. Again, I'm pretty fond of Anker's cables because they are very durable. But unfortunately, that one will not work for these purposes. And in Anker's defense, they did post a warning in the problem description that this cable did not work for the Sony MDR-1000X, which is the first generation of this headphone. This headphone is the second generation, and so I knew I had a suspicion that it would not work, but I figured I'd give it a try anyway because they did not specifically mention it not being compatible with the second generation, but the Anker auxiliary cord is not compatible. So the second cord I got is actually one made by Amazon Basics, and they advertise in the product description that it has this, what they call a beveled step-down design. So you can see that gold bevel raising the actual 3.5 millimeter jack past the housing of the cord. And it is I'm not sure how well that's showing up on camera, but the gold bevel is a bit narrower than the cord housing itself. And so this one actually worked brilliantly. It plugs in, and you can see, well, I don't know if you can see on camera, but the bevel is slim enough to fit inside the housing surrounding the auxiliary input. And so you get a nice secure connection with that cable. But unfortunately, this cable is not braided. And I've had good luck with Amazon Basics products in the past, but it worries me that this may not hold up to frequent travel, being crammed in a bag and things like that. So if anyone from Amazon Basics is watching this video, release a nylon braided version of this cable. I'd buy it in a heartbeat. So then I got one more cable. This is made by a company called Vojo Plus, and I had never heard of them before. I guess they make various auxiliary cords, charging cables, things like that. Never purchased any product for them, but this cable was the top hit on Amazon for slim audio cable. And you can probably even see with your naked eye, if you compare the cable housing against the Amazon Basics one, this one is quite a bit slimmer. I have my little dial calipers here, and we can see that this cable is about just under 0.220 inches, maybe about 0.218 inches in diameter on the housing. Whereas if we compare that to the Amazon Basics cable, this comes in at almost 0.275 inches diameter. However, because Amazon has the very pronounced bevel on the cable, they can get away with a wider housing. This Vojo cable doesn't really have much of a bevel at all, so that slim housing helps it slide in. And that one slides in too. And this is, I actually didn't realize it when I bought it, but this is a nylon braided cable. So it should hold up well to the rigors of traveling. So as far as which of the three cables that actually worked, I did do sound quality testing on all of them. The manufacturer supplied cable that Sony supplied and the Amazon Basics cable, I could not detect any noticeable difference in the sound quality between these two cables. I'm not like a big sound guy by any stretch of the imagination, but those two cables sounded basically identical when I was testing them. With this this Vojo one, it sounded a little bit muffled. Some of the bass was not coming in very pronounced and things like that. So there was definitely a bit of a decline using this cable. If you're plugging it into an in-flight entertainment system to just watch a movie or something like that where there's just going to be a lot of dialogue, it probably should work just fine. And I think for most music listening, it will work just fine as well. But there definitely was a noticeable sound quality decrease using this cable. So that's pretty much it. I'll leave links in the description down below where you can purchase all of these cables that I've used. If you've used other cables with your Sony headphones that work, let us know down in the comments to help each other out. And that's it. I'll see you guys next time.